Hey, move! Get out of the way. You don't belong here. The furious roar cracked through the crowded terminal like a whip, turning heads, freezing bodies, slicing the thin air with humiliation. It wasn't just the tone, it was the venom, the raw fire of prejudice dripping from every word as uniformed cops shoved their way toward a tired black woman dragging her luggage. This wasn't just any woman. This was a judge, a mother's daughter, a woman carrying more weight than anyone in that airport could imagine. Before we unravel this twisted story, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comment. Also, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear is beyond shocking, beyond ordinary. And if you think you've seen injustice before, you haven't seen anything yet, because what happens next, you won't believe it. She had just come from the hospital, her mother's fragile hand still imprinted on her palm. For days she had lived under the beeping machines, praying for the woman who raised her. The judge had hardly slept. Her heart still clung to the smell of antiseptic and whispered prayers. But at the airport, exhaustion became her enemy. The officers seized on her weariness, treating it as guilt. In moments, her belongings were scattered, her dignity torn. The cold steel of cuffs closed around her wrists as gasps filled the air. Phones recorded her humiliation. She was dragged through the terminal as though her years of service meant nothing. The police car door slammed, and the night swallowed her whole. The station was a machine of indifference. Fingerprints pressed into ink, photographs snapped under harsh lights, numbers scribbled onto a file. Each step of the process stripped her further of identity. She sat in a holding cell, the hours stretching endlessly, walls pressing inward. Her mind drifted to her mother, frail and unaware of her daughter's suffering. She thought of the countless rulings she had delivered, the oaths she had sworn. The irony burned justice itself, now caged in silence. Yet in that silence a fire began to rise. The dawn brought release, but no apology, no explanation, no remorse, only scars. She returned home, pulled on her robe, and walked into her courtroom with steps as steady as stone. The garment that symbolized her authority now carried new weight, the scars of her humiliation woven into its folds. She entered the courtroom, the wood polished, the air tense, the seats filled with expectant faces. She scanned the docket and froze. The names burned into her vision. The very officers who had humiliated her now stood accused before her bench. The crowd shifted as the officers entered, their arrogance dimming as they lifted their eyes to the bench. They did not yet know the storm awaiting them. The charges were read: abuse of power, misconduct, misuse of authority. Testimonies piled one on another, voices of the once silenced rising at last. Complaints long buried found breath, painting a portrait of corruption too dark to ignore. The gallery leaned forward, hearts pounding, as the weight of evidence crushed the officer's composure. Outside, news spread like wildfire. The courthouse steps filled with crowds chanting for justice. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed. The city itself seemed to pulse with expectation. The judge sat steady, but inside, a dangerous temptation stirred. The urge to repay humiliation with humiliation, to let scars guide her gavel, but vengeance was poison. She reminded herself of her duty, of her mother's sacrifices, of the oath that demanded balance, even when balance hurt. The trial deepened. The defense clawed desperately, shadows of doubt slipping into the room. As night fell, torches lit the courthouse steps. The crowd did not leave. Chants rose into the sky, their voices unyielding. Inside, the judge lingered alone, her pen still, her robe heavy. The silence pressed against her chest, the decision looming like a mountain. She thought of her mother, of the people outside, of every life scarred by prejudice. The dawn of judgment drew near, and the storm swelled to its breaking point. The courthouse was packed at dawn. The air buzzed, thick with tension. The officers sat pale, stripped of arrogance. The prosecution stood tall. The defense faltered, and the moment of truth loomed. The gavel struck, silencing all. She rose, robe flowing, voice steady though her heart thundered. She spoke of duty, of fairness, of justice stronger than vengeance. She spoke of truth as a light no shadow could extinguish. Her words rolled through the chamber, binding the room in silence so absolute that even breaths felt intrusive. Then the verdict fell. Guilty. The word cracked like thunder. The chamber erupted. Gasps collided with shouts. The crowd outside roared. The officers slumped, their futures shattered. Their boots echoed hollowly as they were led away, the system they had twisted finally turning against them. The judge remained steady, her chest heavy, her spirit unbroken. She had resisted vengeance, chosen truth over scars. She had shown the city that justice could still breathe. Outside, the chants roared louder, echoing through the streets. She stepped into the sunlight, her robe catching the glow of dawn, her head high. Cameras flashed, microphones reached forward, strangers cried tears of relief, but she did not speak. Her silence was a verdict of its own. This was not just a victory, it was a reckoning, a spark that would ripple beyond this trial into precincts, policies, and lives across the nation. Dignity had been stolen but reclaimed. Truth had been buried but risen. Justice had been silenced but found its voice again. And to you listening to this story, let it remind you when injustice tries to break you, remember that justice will not stay silent forever. So before you leave, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and comment where you're watching from, because what we're building here is more than a channel, it's a movement. And the next story waiting for you, it's even more powerful than this one. Stay with us because the fight for justice is far from over.